What's up guys, ATCG here. Welcome back to Yugioh Deck of the Day. Today we have another deck that got a boost from the ban list, and this time we're going to take a look at the two decks that got the worst possible treatment when Master Rule 5 came out. So here's the first one, it's Paleozoic. For some reason, Konami thought that this and ABC would be too powerful to compete in the MR5, so they decided to limit Totally Awesome and limit ABC Dragon Buster, but they finally realized that these decks were not going to be that big of a problem, so they brought back Totally Awesome and Dragon Buster 2, and we can probably expect them to go to 3 during the next ban list. But even with 2 copies, these decks can compete. So today I'm going to showcase the Paleozoic deck, and tomorrow we're going to have a look at ABC. So guys, if you want to see those decks and any other deck that got a boost or a nerf from the ban list, if you enjoy the videos, give a like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming videos. And now let's get the deck profile. So to start with the monsters, we have of course 3 copies of Swap Frog. This is the card you want to see during your opening hand. And if you do, your plays are so much better because the deck is already good enough at controlling with back row, but if you can summon a Totally Awesome during your first turn, then that's pretty much almost always a guaranteed win, unless you're playing against something very, very broken. With Swap Frog, you can send all your frogs from the deck to the grave. If you have a lot of frogs in your hand, you can send them to the grave as well to special Swap Frog and send more Ronins and dupe frogs to the grave. Very, very good card. You have a 2 copies of Ronin. You play 2 because of desires, because you don't want to banish both. Even if you banish both, it's not that bad. You can still play, but you just having this 1 copy in the grave, you can do a lot more. You banish another frog in the grave, special summon this as many times as you want during a turn, so it's good for link climbing, and also of course for going for Totally Awesome. 3 copies of Dupe Frog. This is the one you want to summon with your Totally from the deck so you can protect it from attacks. If you get both on the field, then your opponent will not be able to attack any monster because of that old school lock. And also, if it's destroyed and sent to the grave, you can special summon, you can add a frog from your deck or graveyard to your hand. This can miss timing, however, so you need to be very careful with this card. But sometimes you can just start your plays by setting some traps, and when your opponent runs it over, you can search a Swap Frog and then go from there. So I think it's another 3 of, because this and Swap Frog are the only monsters you're going to be summoning during your first turn, unless you draw the Ronin Totem, but sometimes you'd like to keep it for a discard outlet for Deinamiscus, so it's not the best monster to set. And the last monster is 2 Gameciel, mostly because of Dragoon, because you don't have many ways to deal with Dragoon when you're playing backrow decks, unless you have the Mew Trap that we got from Rise of the Duelist, which was a great call from Konami to give backrow decks a way to deal with such a powerful monster. But this deck can keep adding back Gameciel, so even if your opponent somehow revives the one Dragoon or brings out a second one, you can still get back Gameciel with Totally Awesome, so you can use it on Dragoon again. And it's also good against any kind of disruption cards like Savage or anything else. It's going to answer all of those and gives the deck a little more power going second. The only spell is 3 Pot of Desires, because you need the extra draw power from this deck. Even if you draw more copies, you can just discard them with Deinamiscus, so you don't really mind. The only card you don't want to banish both copies are the Ronin Totems, but even if you banish both Ronin Totems, you can still grind out with your Paleo Traps and then bring them back to go for Totally Awesome, so it's not the end of the world if you banish all your Ronin Totems. It's not like banishing 3 Rays in Sky Striker, nothing like that. And now the heart and soul of the deck, the trap cards. This is why this deck is named after this Paleozoics. So we start with the Paleozoic traps. We have 3 Deinamiscus, by far the best one. You can just discard a card and banish any face-up card on the field, and all the Paleo traps, if you activate, not only if you activate, if another trap is activated in general, you can just special summon them back from the grave, so you can go into your rank 2 plays this way. For Canada is really good actually, because when your opponent starts doing the link plays, before they go there, you can just stop them. So let's say you're playing against Infernoble, if they have 2 warriors on the field and you flip one face down, if they don't have another extender in the hand, then they're not going to be able to summon a Soldier, and their turn's going to pass there. So I think Canada is also really good. It's also good going second, because a lot of the negates now, like cards like Savage, you can just flip them face down when they try to attack, and your opponent will not be able to flip them face up again, so they won't have the negate for the following turn if they try to attack with those monsters. So it's really, really good. 3 Illinoides. The deck also has inherent backrow removal. This card just pops 1 card, but it's better than cards like Heavy Storm Duster, just because it's a Paleo trap and you can bring it back from the grave. And 3 Morella, because you can get any of those traps in the grave, and Morella is also another trap that can special summon stuff from the grave. Next up, we have 3 Ice Dragon's Prison. I keep mentioning it, and I will keep mentioning it until people finally realize how good this card is, because if you're playing control, you have to play this card. Until Dragoon gets banned, like I did in the OCG, this card is mandatory, because you will not have an out for a card that's going to keep popping all your monsters, going to keep negating all your stuff. You need 3 copies of this card, and also 3 copies of the next card, which is 3 copies of Trap Trick. Trap Trick, not only does it access your Paleo traps, but also can access your Ice Dragon's Prison, because the first one is probably going to get negated by Dragoon, but you can only activate it once per turn, so you can use another one if it gets negated, so you can use a second one to bring back a Dark Magician from the grave, and then banish both Dark Magician and Dragoon with just banishing and untargetable. So pretty much that's how you deal with Dragoon, so you need to max out on the copies you can, just because Dragoon is an auto-win. If you don't have an out to it, you just cannot win the game, because just this monster will keep all the pressure up, so you're going to lose eventually. 3 copies of Goes in the Match. Goes in the Match is better than Rivalry right now. If you find yourself at a point where you think Rivalry is better, you can replace Gozen with Rivalry, but I think Gozen is a little bit better because of cards like Needle Fiber and Link Rust. Even if you're playing like a machine deck deck, like the one is Needle Fiber's Water, so they won't be able to do anything with it. And it's also a good card going second if you have established a board. If you have this along with a card like a Solemn, then you can just destroy their entire board and they keep only one monster on the field. And for their counter traps, play 3 Solemn Strike because it's a good combo with Ghost Nomads, like I said. It's good going second to stop their negates when you try to banish cards with Dino-Miscus. And also, it's a really good card going first because the Solemns are the best traps in the game by far when you can set them going first. And 3 Solemn Judgment because one more contender against this deck has been released. Harpy's Feather Duster is a blowout. If you let it resolve against this deck, you're going to lose. So you need to max out on this more than ever before because cards like Lightning Storm, Evenly Matched, and now Harpy's Feather Duster are in the game. So you need to be very careful because backrow decks have this inherent weakness and they auto lose to one single card like that. Now let's go to the extra deck. 2 copies of Totally Awesome. This is very important for the deck. When the deck had 1 copy, you were forced to shuffle back Totally Awesome when he went to the grave with his own effect. But now that you have 2, the first Totally can get you back a Swap, can get you back a Gamma Seal, it can get you back anything else. So you're not forced to recycle this 1 copy every single time. Also, with 1 Totally Awesome, you could not get this insane advantage with a grind game, which have 2 Totally Awesomes and use the effect to get 2 Dupe Frogs from the deck. But now with 2, you can do that. So this is how the deck pretty much overwhelms the opponent by having 2 Totallys on the field, constantly getting more Frogs from the deck and still having more back row. So this is really, really good that we have 2. 3 would be very, very good, of course, but 2 is not as different from 3 as 1 is very different from 2. Next up, 2 Pabinia. You go to this card a lot. If you already have your Totally Awesome on the field and you don't think you need another negate, this card can give you another trap. Also, you can use that trap right away because you can use the traps from your hand. So if you need to deal with something, you can search it Dino-Miscus and then just banish it right away by activating Dino-Miscus from the hand. 1 on Amalakaris. You rarely summon this card, but it's just another option you can if you get into the grind game with a lot of Paleo traps on the field. This card can actually give you a lot of advantage and it pops cards. 1 Sky Cavalier Centauria. This card is really good against Dragoon as well. And yes, I'm keep mentioning Dragoon because Dragoon is the end-all be-all in this format because every deck is going to be playing it. And this card, when it battles a monster, you can just detach a material and bounce that monster back to the extra deck. So that's really, really good. You can get rid of Dragoon this way. And 1 Cat Shark because Cat Shark is the one that helps you deal more damage in some scenarios. Now for the links, play 2 Link Spiders, mainly because of Paleo traps. They're all normal traps and they become normal monsters. So if you want to go for something like a Boral Sword or a Borload, you can't because they're normal monsters. You need to make them effect monsters. Also, Link Spider gives you the down arrow so you can go into Nightmare plays if you need that. 1 Coral Anemone because you can bring back your Swap Frog and then send another monster and basically have a Totally Awesome along with a Coral Anemone, and something you cannot do with Mr. Boy during the early game. But having this extra bit of power on the field is actually really important because Anemone and Swap and Anemone and Totally are more than half your opponent's life points. So with 2 turns, you can just finish them off with just these 2 monsters. Or if you just have Totally Awesome on the field, then your opponent can be safe for a couple more turns because you don't have a lot of damage on the field. It'll take you 4 turns to actually beat them unless you start summoning more cards. 1 Mr. Boy to boost all your monsters. Sometimes you have 2 Totallys and a Mr. Boy that's enough damage to get through anything. And also it gives you recyclability when it's destroyed, so it's a good card. 1 Nightmare Phoenix because Link Spider gives you the option to go into this and be able to draw a card. But even if you don't have Link Spider, this card is also really good because there are certain cards that you will not be able to play against and you need some more back row removal that is not as reliant on drawing it like a card like Olanoidus. It gives you more utility. Unicorn, just Link Climb. You can very easily get 3 monsters on the field because you can just bring back all those traps, and sometimes you need to get rid of stuff before you summon your Totally Awesome because summoning Totally Awesome on an established board doesn't do enough because even if you summon your Dupe Frog from the deck, then your opponent just run over both without using an effect, so you need to somehow clear your opponent's board first and then set up your Totally Lock, so that's better. And the 2 Link 4s are Boral Sword because this deck can bring it out with Link Spider with a lot of monsters. Some Link Spider, and having a Swap Frog and a Ronin, and that's Boral Sword, so you can do a lot of damage. And 1 Borload because stealing a Dragoon can sometimes steal you the game because you can just pop the rest of their monsters with their own Dragoon's effect and have a negate during their following turn because you have something to discard Dragoon, so that's really good. So yep, that's the deck, guys. It's a deck that's been pretty much a relevant deck ever since it came out. It never fell off the meta before Totally Awesome got limited, and now that Totally Awesome is back, I think people are going to start experimenting with the deck. It's another control deck in the mix with decks like Altergeist and Subterror. Trap decks have become a little bit more prevalent because of cards like Ice Dragon's Prison, so they can combat the meta, and I think they do have a lot of potential if built correctly and if they know the matchups, because if you're playing control deck, you have to know the matchups. It's not something like a Pendulum deck or an Emancipator and you just summon like 5 negates and shotgun negates on everything your opponent does. You have to know the matchups, you have to know the choke points of the decks you're facing, so you know what to hit and to have the most optimal eruptions. So yeah, that's the deck, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. It helps us a lot for the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss our upcoming videos, and we'll see you next time.